we'll get it going.
3. Well, never mind. 2-1. You were all set whenever you're ready.
All right. Let me know if you can see it. Can you guys see the presentation?
Yes.
All right. And I'll put in presenter view. Can you still see it? It's probably loading.
Yeah, we can see it.
Awesome. Well, hey everyone. Thank you for coming today and wanting to learn a little bit more about crypto economics. I will get it started. Come on. There we go. It's working. So today I'm just going to go over who I am, the team I work on at the CryptoEconLab, and some crypto economic examples. And then would love to see if anyone's going to Consensus, one of the largest crypto events in Austin next week. I'd love to see you guys at our event called Crypto Econ Day and just describe everything that goes on in this very emerging field. So a little bit about who I am. I'm the ecosystem lead of a team called CryptoEconLab. My background in crypto is that I'm the Bitcoin class of 2015. I started working professionally at a company called Consensus, which is one of the first developers and first teams to really foster Ethereum adoption since around, I believe it was around 2015, 2016. I worked in a lot of different roles within the mesh portfolio, within kind of like sales, business development, partnerships, but also I had a stint within a group called Consensus Health, which you all are probably familiar with Heather Flannery and Sean Mannion and a bunch of others that are part of that group. I used to work on that team for a while as well. I then also worked in blockchain strategy and development within Accenture, and particularly the federal group, the Accenture Federal Services Group, and worked in a lot of different groups, especially within healthcare, life science, DHS, and some of the other like FinCEN, SEC, CFTC, etc. I then went on to run the emerging technology investment portfolio, Humana, and I also created a blockchain for healthcare curriculum at Jefferson University here in Philadelphia, where I reside. I've the past couple of years I've been more so on the public blockchain side rather than the centralized or private permission blockchain side. And I joined this particular team at CryptoEconLab in October of this past year. CryptoEconLab originally started as a group within Protocol Labs. So Protocol Labs is the infrastructure, decentralized storage or decentralized infrastructure group that enables people to be able to host their own data storage and their compute around the world and be able to get paid for hosting that data storage. And we built out the economics and the economy for Filecoin and others. We have a core team of about 9 of us, with 5 of us that have PhDs in economics, physics, or data science. But we have contractors all around the world that get us to around 15 people total. And we work on a number of things such as incentive mechanism design, protocol design, a lot of custom simulations and models such as agent-based models or goal-directed agent-based models. These type of technologies allow you to estimate when the circulating supply of an ecosystem or a network goes to certain values, or if certain individuals or certain agents within your network hold tokens or hold value or hold compute or whatever your utility is, that you can estimate out their behaviors and some of their actions when they have those tokens, and potential positive and negative attack vectors when it comes to the economics. With that, we also produce audits and risk assessments, analytical dashboards. And when it comes to regulatory bodies, we have actually interacted with some federal agencies in the United States and across the world in technical and economic protocol research. And we also do community governance, which may speak to a lot of you all in the group, as in these different ecosystems and protocols such as Ethereum, Cosmos, Avalanche, Arbitrum, Optimism, etc. They have what are called protocol improvement proposals. In those protocol improvement proposals, we will help a foundation, a team specifically, that wants to get a proposal passed that needs math, economics, or data behind it to prove that the proposal is worth it. We will help them build that out for them in their special way. So we are a crypto economic services firm, but we also do research with a lot of groups, both in federal and public open source blockchain communities as well. But we can talk about that later, how we can assist and help you out. But I want to go into some examples of what crypto economics are and what they mean. To me personally, Crypto economics are meant to create global collective action. And this isn't just within the federal US government, within the federal US region. This is with currencies and macroeconomics and interactions with people all around the world. And so crypto economics is this new tier of research and new tier of being able to analyze and evaluate how people interact, value, and utility with each other with more so three-sided marketplaces. So in two-sided marketplaces like Airbnb, like in Google, like in eBay, etc., you have a customer and a seller of the service and or the software or of the utility. But in crypto, you create this third dimension in there where you add in a component of not only do you have the seller and the buyer, the customer, but that buyer and or seller then interacts in equities and or earning rewards or potential value of how the overall protocol and or the value exchange and or the application interacts with each other. And that's a whole new demand that has a lot of macroeconomic effects, but also a lot of opportunities that both the federal government and public sector, or sorry, the public sector and the private sector can both benefit from. One example or some key use cases I want to mention are they can help grow users, build loyalty, capture value at more of a global scale rather than just a centralized application scale. They can create new utilizations into products. They reward specific actions, and they can disperse and distribute revenue in very creative ways. Are there any questions so far of what crypto economics are, how they mean, or what they mean?
I got just a quick question. A lot of people
Sure.
use the term. Do you make a distinction between crypto economics and tokenomics, or are they synonymous?
They're synonymous,
Okay,
typically
great.
speaking. Yeah. Cool. I can then move on. The first example I want to go over today is this uncle maker attack, which happened in Ethereum right before the proof of work to proof of stake merge about August or July, August, September of last year. This research was conducted. We partnered with it with I believe it was Jerusalem University. I forget their full spelling of how they do it, but it was before I joined the team. So what we wanted to find out within this group is protocol manipulation possible in proof of work chains? Because as they're emerging from proof of work into proof of stake, there were questions of whether someone should go into proof of stake if it was more secure, if it was more financially, like we all know that it was saving energy, it was having all these like ESG benefits, but was it more secure? And so we wanted to find out, can Ethereum blocks give first evidence of a consensus level attack? Because up to this point in the summer before the proof of stake merge actually happened, this wasn't actually possible. So in this, the problem we tried to solve is in Ethereum, the difficulty of mining the current block changes on the fly and decreases the longer the time has passed without anyone mining a new valid block. So the block is then proposed, then someone has to then accept the block and then put it onto the blockchain through the mempool, etc. And this is done to ensure interblock times will not be too high and you don't have to wait too long for your transaction to be verified. What can happen though is you can actually timestamp out the competition. So the time between blocks, like the mining difficulty, is determined according to the block stamps. So the problem with that is that miners have freedom when setting them, and they can set false timestamps. So they have control over how and what transaction, what blocks can actually be picked up. For example, a miner can start mining a block now, but set the block's timestamp to be 5 seconds in the past or 10 seconds in the future. As long as the timestamp is within a certain bound, within those 10 seconds in Ethereum, it'll still be valid in Ethereum. And this is an example of what it actually looks like from the parent block. And then on the bottom right here, you see in red and green and whatnot, the uncle blocks that actually go into the parent blockchain. Another yeah. A miner who wishes to replace the last block in the blockchain can do so by mining a new block of its own, which has a timestamp, which is low enough to increase the difficulty. This is not what is public in most Ethereum docs, because in most Ethereum docs they say, oh, you have 10 seconds, and then within that 10 seconds it gets picked up. But they don't always often state that the miner has control of these type of issues. So the problem here is really against the honest miner strategy. So we described the attack of how an uncle maker related to the parent could actually take advantage of the block. Because in the honest miner strategy, this is a theoretical research conclusion, that an honest miner always will mine a block in the longest chain which they can see fit. So like within 9 seconds or in between that time. They always publish a block as soon as the block is produced. In Ethereum, honest miners reference uncle blocks as much as they can and no more than 2. And obviously these things, well, not obviously, but now with things like MEV and the extraction of value and many different areas of the blockchain, this has become less true over time. And so what we did was we now analyzed many different attacks that could happen within the Ethereum blockchain. And what we did was we found one called In Search of Lost Time, an uncle making attack in the wild. So in this F2 pool, so in Ethereum, they have these many different pools that miners conduct so that different proposers or people that put transactions into the blockchain could actually be accepted in. And within the F2 pool in particular, we noticed that every single 9 seconds, there was a pause and there actually wasn't a timestamp coming or picking up the transaction from the block at every divisible of 9. So at 9, 18, 27, etc. Some transactions were just being taken away or they weren't actually being accepted into the blockchain. And so other pools, for example, like in Ethermine, in Hivion, etc., they don't have that every divisible of 9. They're actually picking up every single block and they're picking up every single transaction. But the F2 pool specifically attempts to replace these blocks. That's a little concerning, right? What we found is that in there, sorry, if I were to go back to, what we found is in F2 specifically, the miner of F2 pool was actually taking the transactions, adding it to their own rewards, accepting all this money, and no one was actually finding out that they were doing this for years. They were doing it for about 5 to 7 years total. And so they were stealing money to add in and saying the money they were taking from the F2 pool was adding to the security of the Ethereum blockchain. But no one really knew this in the public discourse. And so they were making their own rule within the proof of work chain of Ethereum. And so thanks to this research, that kind of reiterated the fact that proof of stake, you can't actually do this because one, there's many different actors, there's validators in the blockchain that actually can prevent these type of attacks from happening and that miners have less control to do this. And so that was part of our research and why it was beneficial. So the lessons learned were don't trust, verify, don't believe every developer doc you have. Take your time when understanding proof of work chain to proof of stake before fully going all in. And any L1 can fall here. Like any mechanism, like within crypto economics, can not always follow just the honest miner or the honest actor type of theories. And you really need to check if those things happen. Any question on the ETH Uncle Maker attack?
I have a question, Dr. Jack from Tuskegee University. So what you're saying, I was multitasking, but so you're saying that what you learned is that an attack can occur if you're just relying on timestamps, or did I misunderstand?
What we learned is that miners in the blockchain have an advantage in proof of work, that they can pretty much move the goalposts and or take advantage of a consensus layer attack within a proof of work chain.
Oh, so
and that they could particularly take, they can take transactions before, like, because in Ethereum, every 10 seconds a transaction needs to be picked up. But at that 9-second part, they were taking transactions and putting into their own F2 pool and receiving the rewards. And no, it wasn't publicly known that some group was able to do this at the time.
So how do you address that? What are you about to discuss that?
Well, no, we addressed it just by like publishing the research and doing the work and doing the research. And then that was more known in the Ethereum community, and it just reiterated while we needed most of the action to move from proof of work to proof of stake. So we showed, consensus level attack can happen, and that was the result. And so most financialization and most money has moved from proof of work to proof of stake, and everything is better now from that security perspective. But that was part of the research we did.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions on this one in particular?
Yeah, there's a question in the chat. Is it correct to say proof of stake is more secure than proof of work?
Uh, as of research today, you could probably assume yes, but it depends like what you deem as safe. There are now debates within minor extractable or maximal extractable value, MEV in particular, and MEV happens in TradFi every single day too. So like DeFi and crypto is no different, where like there's obviously some type of game and mechanism you can play to take advantage of the network, but within proof of stake, a lot more of the transactions are controlled within the validator set within the mempool, and it's a lot harder to play these type of games in this particular instance than in others. But there are plenty of other attacks. Like there are proposers and builders being able to collude with each other and give advantage to them because they're saying, oh, we're going to only publish at these times, you pick up transactions at these times. There's plenty of games people can play, but yeah, it would say it's a little bit more secure from like this perspective, from avoiding these type of attacks. But others, like we do a lot of work in the Filecoin economy, right? And so Filecoin is enabling payment of decentralized storage and decentralized compute. There's a utility there where you're paying for the utility of that. I'm a storage provider that's an individual. I own these ASICs or these GPUs, and I want to be able to then get paid for hosting this. But who's verifying that my compute is good? Who's verifying the data that I said I'm hosting is actually hosted here? And there's like levels of ZK snarks and cryptographic primitives that can verify that data and all type of things like that. But yeah, it just depends on, and that's technically proof of stake. That's definitely proof of work. Your work is the data and the compute that you're contributing to the network, and then getting paid in Filecoin, which makes it more resilient. And you verify it, and it's a global compute network, and it's 8,000 times cheaper than when you use AWS, Google, or Alibaba or Azure. So it just depends on when you deem as safe.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah. The next one I want to go into is EIP 1559, which you may have heard. It's really about designing multidimensional pricing. And multidimensional pricing is more efficient in Ethereum today, thanks to this EIP that got accepted and got passed. But one of the problems within that is that within a transaction, there's this thing called gas fees. Gas fees are mainly, like, if you want to simplify it, gas is the amount of computation it takes to provide security and provide the value to the actual data or the currency that is then getting uploaded into the blockchain. But in Ethereum, in the past, they combine the gas fee to the actual like fee, computation fee, and the transaction fee. And in the secondary market, that's separated. In the mempool, that's separated. But in the gas fee, it's not. And so this kind of goes into research of why you need to separate them. So fee markets with a fixed relative price are inefficient. And in our work, we make a framework with, we did this work with MIT and Bain Capital Crypto to optimally set multidimensional fee structures here. And this was mainly made by Theo Diamandis at MIT, who led this research. So within the mempool, you have your CPU, and then you have your bandwidth. In gas markets, in the first dimensional markets, you have your CPU, but you combine them with the gas. And in secondary markets, what you see mostly on exchanges, indexes, et cetera, you separate the bandwidth to the CPU. So why are transactions so expensive in the gas market, right? Well, orthogonal resources should be priced separately, and we need a mechanism to design those different fee markets. And this is a huge benefit in crypto economic research, is understanding how you can build these fee markets and why they are valuable. So if you want, not to get too mathy into this, but your objective is to maximize the utility of the included transactions minus the loss occurred by the network. So you want to have as many transactions that hit hundreds of thousands of transactions like Visa and MasterCard, but you don't want it to have to be overly expensive, right? You don't want your gas cost to cost you more than the actual transaction is worth. And so your utilization is the resource usage, including the transactions, and that gets you to a certain allowable amount of transactions to be able to produce. And this is a very hard and complex problem to solve when you combine them in the gas and the computation of that. And so a network designer, like if you're designing the mechanism and you're running the protocol and you're doing protocol design, you cannot solve for this truly in practice because it doesn't decide, like, the designer can't decide what transactions are in a block. The validators do that. And they don't necessarily know the utilities because the ecosystem should flow and have many utilities that are relevant for this. And you cannot include fractional transactions as well. But what we tried to do in research with MIT is understand the duality theory, relaxing constraints to penalties. So the network designer cares about utilization. They create their mechanism design specifically for utilization based on the transactions that need that utilization. The block builders only care about which transactions they can include. We then decouple the utilization with the actual transaction producer. So the utilization doesn't get taxed at the gas fee, only the transaction gets taxed at the gas fee. And you correctly set the penalty to the dual problem. For the original problem and the utilizations, they're equal, but they're separate in how they are priced out. And to show more so like how that changes, right? When multidimensional fees they can increase the throughput. So this is on the left, this is how they are today, right? Where the multidimensional prices are set. But then on the right, you can actually see how the gas in blue, in dark blue, is actually becoming more expensive, even though transactions are still going up, right? But even when the transaction distribution shifts, that doesn't always mean that the gas won't be cheaper. And so resource utilization tracks these a lot better. So if you see in orange, this is the utilization of the network, right? The resource utilization. And you separate those two out, you can actually track the prices and they become a lot more linear than they are wild and or scattered. And multidimensional fees on the left compared to when you combine the two on the right. And those are just a couple examples of separating out the gas fee from the transaction, the utility of why you build out the network. And the conclusion is, if you have a choice of objective function by a network designer that yields an optimal price update rule, you can optimize your framework and your network a lot better. And that was the thing we found there. Any questions on that in particular? Because I know that can be complex.
Yeah, so basically you just showed the decoupling and how the decoupling can lower the price or be more efficient, or did I misunderstand?
Correct. To make it more efficient and to also, like, when you're creating mechanism design, you can actually price out now specifically the gas usage to the transactions and not just blend it in with the utility that you're providing into the network, which is very valuable in as far as like estimating overall cost, spend, effort, your burn rate, your minting rate, your circulating supply, and it just gives you a clear picture of what you're paying for in the network, which before in Ethereum, in these when you didn't separate out the gas fee and the transaction and the utility, it was very hard to kind of estimate that. Like people weren't actually sure whether, like, yeah, Ethereum price went up and they're like, oh, my gas is going to go up, but why does that always have to happen? And these were some answers to that of why that doesn't need to always be the case.
And what does gas stand for?
Gas equals the amount of computation. It's a combination of computation and security that is incentivized by Ethereum developers and validators of the network.
So almost like energy, if you will, to a certain extent.
Yeah, think of it as like your tax. Gas is like your tax to add a transaction or add data to a blockchain.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
And we just separated it out and made it a little bit more clear for people. Any additional questions? Cool. I'll move on then to Gitcoin and economic goods models, which probably will make more sense to a lot of the federal people here, and also talk about more creative models of how public goods are being incentivized and being funded these days. So within Gitcoin in particular, we helped them expand the 2x2 model of how they fund public goods. So you have private goods, you have food, clothing, cars, and then you have common goods like wild fish, timber, and coal, right? and you could see on the left like the things that are excludable when it comes to like tax and or public goods funding, and the ones that are non-excludable, right? So what we did is, one, help them understand the different concepts and utilities and constraints in the digital world, right? So in like if you go into the anti-rival risk type of good, there's network goods such as like English or ZK proofs. We believe ZK proofs are public goods because they maintain privacy, but they also give you verification of data, information, or currency. And then there's symbiotic goods like the internet, right? Like the internet is actually a public good. We have public agencies, federal governments that actually help maintain security, help maintain action, help maintain throughput, how it works, etc. And we help them really organize out these constructs and how they could be able to price them. And in particular, we tried to mitigate Sybil attacks. So Sybil attacks, if you want to think of that, is like Sybil attacks mostly prevent like someone from copying or creating a false payment or a false grant, right? So in grant funding and grant payments, right, someone could just say I mean, it's a little bit harder in federal cases to do this, but you could say, oh, I received a grant within like 5 years ago for this research I did with the NIH, right? And they can put down a number, et cetera. But a lot of the databases and systems don't talk to each other within the federal government. And so they could put down that number, and the admin who's actually verifying that could say, oh yeah, they said that they did this, so we'll trust them as the honest majority of the honest actor, and they can move on and receive additional grants when they may not have actually received that grant in the first place, right? And so in Gitcoin in particular, we help them mitigate Sybil attacks and false attacks of how many donors they actually produced. And you can all find this on the blockchain, right? Like the blockchain is transparent. You can actually see all transactions. And Sybil attacks were increasing at the time with airdrop farmers, self donors, collusion of groups. So like crypto whales were just going from whale to whale and donating to each other's causes and receiving quadratic funding and things like that, because they were saying, oh, we're affecting this many accounts, this many wallet addresses, right? But all those wallet addresses were just in a multi-sig to that one person. It wasn't actually going to multiple different users. And so one of the ways to actually prevent this is through identity. And Sybil and fraud defense is adding in like a fraud tax, and the delta between the way funds will be allocated without fraud defense services. And Gitcoin has stopped about $3 million in fraudulent funding allocation since December 21 due to some of the mechanisms we've created within Sybil and fraud defense. So it's being able to go in and understand what accounts actually have multi-sigs or not allowing multi-sigs to be able to donate and or fund public goods because of some of these things, being able to make individual contributors and solo funders or solo stakers into these networks have more benefit than just only whales, but whales have to still obviously receive benefit as well. So there's a lot of different mechanisms we did in research with them to prohibit this. And one of the projects I think is actually very interesting in crypto that could benefit Sybil attacks in particular is WorldCoin. WorldCoin is that cryptocurrency project that actually scans your iris in your eye and gives you a one-to-one verification that this token is representative of you as a person in the world. Having that, there's a lot of privacy concerns, obviously, and it can freak a lot of people out depending on where they come from. But I think you prevent Sybil attacks a lot more by doing that. And who's to say the federal governments of the United States or other places in the world aren't already doing this in some type of way, shape, or fashion or form? So that's just my opinion, but not saying it's meant for every use case or for everything. But that can absolutely help prevent Sybil attacks in the future. Any questions, particularly on the Gitcoin public goods and how we prevented Sybil attacks and false attacks?
But this hasn't been implemented yet, correct?
Not the WorldCoin thing, no, definitely. But the other Gitcoin, yeah, the Gitcoin stuff has been implemented from the other Sybil attacks of how we prevented multi-sigs and other things like that. That has actually been implemented, yeah.
Okay. All right.
And Gitcoin actually is probably one of the best and most secure public goods funding projects out there in the world today, where you can donate to online and digital native actions and actually have that representative of the actual people who did the work, rather than just assuming that like this only vendor approved group got this grant or things like that. And I'm personally a fan of it as well. Cool. So, any other questions on that? Cool. I'll move on. So this is research that Gauntlet did in gradual Dutch NFT auctions. So this was more so talking about the problem about the goals of NFT auctions and how selling a batch of NFTs really, when you don't know the price at first, isn't really worth it. And can a gradual Dutch auction, which is an economic mechanism design, can this affect these auctions to make them more fair, to make them more price transparent, et cetera? And that was part of the research. So one, there's desired data within NFT auctions. You want to have incentive compatible numbers for the buyer, for the seller. You want to have price discovery so you can have supply equal demand. You also want the auction to be computationally trackable, traceable, understand like where and how it's being like sent out to the marketplace. Typically in crypto ones, especially with NFTs. So there's a difference between NFTs and verifiable credentials. NFTs are public representations of identification, such as like person, place, thing, data, currency, etc. Whereas verifiable credentials are private permission ones, such as like my US ID, my house address, my financial bank account, etc. Right. And so in NFTs in particular, you typically don't want many off-chain side agreements, because in these NFTs, they are mostly they're public representations. They're public means of clout, such as like collectibles, that you went to this concert, you went to these events. I mean, some of those events and details can be proprietary and private, depending who you talk to and your what you want to do. But typically, NFTs represent public uses and public actions. So I went to this park, or I created this public good, or I am a public official, I am the president of the United States, etc. You probably want those things to be known as an NFT. And also, you want your NFT auctions to adversaries. They shouldn't be able to manipulate the auction without breaking cryptographic primitives. And Tarun from Gauntlet in particular asked to make a joke about incentive compatibility, and it was a little bit weird. So that was kind of the funny part of it on ChatGPT. But can we get ideal single item NFT auctions? And according to research, the group found not really, because there's no single item NFT auction mechanism as considered in definition one that satisfies the properties of a bidder that could actually do this in a public setting where the bidder pays the seller some non-zero positive amount. So what we're asking, understanding is, can we do NFT auctions? Can we like sell NFTs on marketplaces without some type of bribe or bid? We're not really sure. And according to Paradigm, which is a venture capital research firm in our space as well, gradual Dutch auctions are a novel sequential auction mechanism designed for NFTs. They're adapted for a blockchain setting, prove difficult to manipulate on chain. In particular, you can manipulate it off chain in off chain settings, like I can text you like about this NFT before I launch it, etc. But on chain, you can't really manipulate. They're dynamic, posted on a price mechanism, so the buyers offered take it to or leave it price. There's nothing really that the buyer can do. They don't have much incentive. But is an incentive compatible? Yes, even for interdependent values. And this is what the Paradigm research actually showed. But Paradigm noted that a gradual Dutch auction was not incentive compatible for sellers and buyers without tuning it to the ways of either party. So like some party within the two needs to benefit from it. And you also need to understand what revenue guarantees do you have. And you have a bounded proof of attribution and matroid settings. And that's a very detailed math term for saying that you need to have a specific winner in this case to be able to make it go forward. So if you think about NFT releases, right, they kind of go like this. They have a peak when they initially sell off, kind of like an airdrop as well, where they're at their peak price when they first release. Also, kind of like the Coinbase IPO as well, where they have a peak offering, they go up to that peak, and then they slowly drift down. They slowly drift down because there's nothing really incentivizing someone to like buy an NFT later. It's just you get it at its peak price, when it usually happens when it first launches, and then the price goes down. And that's kind of what Paradigm showed in their research. But then if you were to spoof the Paradigm auction, there's a demand curve and then the supply curve. So the supply of a batch of NFTs may go up, but the demand of it over time typically goes down. And that's because the auctioneer buys the first R auctions at this mathematical formula. But then the seller can also profit akin to wash trading if you're using wash trading. And wash trading is really frowned upon in crypto, because if you bought it out or you use an algorithm to do this, you typically can be more successful. So it really just depends on your demand curve and how you want to do these things. So yes, if you have a bot and if you have an algo, you could be very successful in these type of actions. But this means that the original gradual Dutch auction is not incentive compatible for the seller. And that is actually true. It's all about incentive compatibility. So there's matrioids and there's interdependence. And sequential auctions, like having an NFT, price go down, having an NFT go up, price go down. The sequential auctions naturally have interdependence, like the values depend on what other bidders bid on, just like in eBay, just like in other auctions out there. And there's interdependent auctions often have a winner's curse. The winning bidder overbids relative to the true common value. So kind of just like in any auction, even like public auctions where you have people holding up the signs and they're voting on something, the winner's curse isn't unaffected in NFTs as well. You see that someone's just overbidding on the price, and that's actually not the winner gets it, yes, but they're bidding way too high, where the real value is here in green of the cats. But the winner's curse is like, yes, no, I want it, but at what cost? And so the winner's curse happens in NFT auctions as well, just like they do in real life too. So like chains and transparency and open public auctions, they're not much different than when you see online on eBay and or in public forums. We need to make sure that the current buyers don't regret buying at high prices. And so that's why we need to make tools to help all bidders and all auctioneers and buyers understand the risks and the things they're getting into within these NFT auctions. And that was thanks to economic research and crypto economic research that was done by Gauntlet, Paradigm, and others in the space. Any questions on that in particular? And those are the three examples I really wanted to give to you guys today within the space of crypto economics, to show like why this may be valuable, how it could be used in every single day life, etc. And me and the group of the CryptoEconLab, we actually get together and we host these quarterly conferences all around the world because crypto economics are global. We hosted one in Denver around the time of ETH Denver in March 1st. And now we have another one coming up next week, next Tuesday at Consensus, called Crypto Econ Day. These are quarterly research summits that bring together researchers and practitioners to discuss everything crypto economics. And I would love to see more federal and regulatory individuals who come to our crypto econ days, but also are part of our research groups as well. So we at the CryptoEconLab, we have open problems on our GitHub, and we have we would love to be able to service some federal and regulatory boards or groups or agencies in some of their work in either paid services or through grant programs, etc. I'd love to have discussions with other people that want to be able to work together and or make these things a little bit more clear to everyday people, because as we saw this past week with Chair Gensler of the SEC, he's making laws on crypto when he hasn't even actually traded or used crypto through a wallet, through a service, etc. Right? And I think if federal agencies and regulatory bodies, if they had more hands-on experience or research or findings from what is actually going on under the hood, right? What is actually the incentive structure? What is actually going on with the protocol design? They can make better, more informed decisions of what crypto is actually meant for and why it is valuable. Because the thing is, you saw in all the DeFi reportings, the Treasury report, etc., everyone agrees crypto is not going away. Crypto is not going away. It's going to be here. People are going to utilize it, and people are going to use it for good, and some are going to use it for bad. But I think the main takeaway, I think, for what I want to do within crypto economics and this research field and this space is to make this less opaque, less vague, and less complicated, and to show how it could be used in every single day life. And that's part of what our quarterly research summits are, and everything. So we have presenters from Binance, Coinbase, University of Texas, Carnegie Mellon, George Washington University, and a bunch of others that are presenting here in Austin. Our future summits are actually going to be in Paris and in Singapore, but we would love at some point to do one in DC with more regulators, with more people that are connected to the financial security and or other institutions. And yeah, that's pretty much my spiel. Here are some contact information. You can be able to find me and the group that I work at. That's my email over there on the right. These are the Twitter and LinkedIn links that I will send to Josh to be able to then send out to the group at the conclusion of this meeting. But yeah, thanks everyone for the time. Thanks for the platform, and love to talk crypto economics with each and every one of you.
Hey, thanks, Mike. That was beautifully done. We have a question in chat, or a hand up rather. Gerard, go ahead.
Hey, Mike, thank you very much. That was extremely informative, and I got a lot out of that. I got just a couple questions. One is, do you have any educational content that you make available, either free or paid? What sort of resources do you have that we could potentially share with some of our members?
Most of the educational content we do is in paid engagements. But for federal or regulatory partners, we have discounts for that. So happy to talk about what that entails. Most of our work, we have this group called Launchpad. Launchpad is like a Filecoin Protocol Labs educational platform that has paid us to do crypto economic work and or tutorials and decks and all type of like workshops and stuff with them. They've paid us to do that, but we're happy to work with another group like your GBA group or others on what crypto economics are and how we can make these more digestible to federal partners as well.
Yes, one of the things. So I'd like to maybe see if we can schedule a call so we're not taking everybody's time. I'm driving, so I can't actually record your contact information. Maybe Josh could provide it or something. But we're putting together an educational curriculum, online curriculum, and it would be there's some interest stuff that's free, but the majority of it is paid. And so maybe we could talk about putting together a crypto economics course, a paid course that potentially we could do some kind of revenue split. So that's something I'd like to talk about. The last thing is we do have an event coming up in May called the Future of Money, Governance, and Law, and are you familiar with it?
Future Money and Law. I think I've heard of it. Yeah.
Future Money, Governance, and Law. So one of our speakers is the Assistant Secretary General of the United Nations, who is responsible for she basically is responsible for the UN's pension fund. It's a $78 billion fund, and it covers 80,000 retirees. So they've built blockchain solutions specifically in the area of identity. So a lot of stuff you talked about there resonate. But we'll have government leaders from around the world in Washington, D.C., May 23rd and May 24th and 25th. And a lot of the stuff you're talking about, I think, would be of interest. We'll have folks from different federal agencies, but also state and local, and also other countries around the world. Estonia is going to be there, a number of others. But I think this topic of crypto economics is definitely something that we should cover with government leaders from around the world.
Totally agree. I put my email in the chat if it's easier for you to access. I know you're driving, so I don't want you to actually like do things, but it's just mike.mccoy@protocol.ai. So awesome. I will take this link and I will put it in my browser.
Hey, Gerard, this is Josh. I dropped the link for the Money Governance and Law event in chat so that Mike can take a look at it, and I'll send you his contact info.
That would be awesome. Thank you very much, Mike. I'm looking forward to talking to you. I think we've got a lot. We've got a big community that definitely needs to learn more about what you're talking about, and I think it could create some great opportunities for you as well. So I'm looking forward to it.
Cool. Sounds good.
All right, Mike. Well, I just want to thank you again for volunteering to come in and speak with us today. I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording.